Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a highly accomplished talent leader who has led teams at some of Germany's biggest names, from Kuehne Nagel, Compal, and now Qcells. This individual has been honing the craft of talent acquisition for the past decade and brings knowledge not just in terms of hiring, but also the wider HR and organizational psychology. Having led teams for 5 years, this individual is not afraid to challenge the business from within the talent function. And that's exactly what we're going to learn from him today. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcome today's guest, Head of Talent Acquisition at Qcells, Fuat. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Eden, for having me.
And now you know why I said, have you got a tea in the introduction before we clicked record. He doesn't have a tea for anyone who is listening, which is part of the tea time prerequisite. So he's failed that one. But anyways, before we get into the topic, as I said, around challenging a business from the TA function, let's call it a little teaser, icebreaker, whatever you want to do, just something to start the conversation. So for this season, if anyone's been listening, and for obviously yourself, if you followed along, we've been asking the question around AI. So more specifically, where in your own perception do you feel AI has a place in the talent acquisition function?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I've been asked it quite a lot recently. So I think best use cases are in the more administrational tasks. So creating job requirements like job ads, interview scheduling might also be a case where you can use it. We are also trying some tests for the hiring process itself, like when it comes to reducing biases. But we feel like it's a very early stage in that area. So yeah, I think overall there's a very strong case for all the administrational tasks within talent acquisition.
So you and I have jobs. That's what you're telling me.
Yes, we will keep having jobs in the future.
We're going to keep having. I'm not sure if you've seen, there's a company, I think they're based out of the US. Everything AI seems to be coming out of the US at the moment. Where it is a video interviewer, a generative video interview. I think they secured their seed funding. Yay or nay to that? What do you think?
It's interesting because actually some studies suggest that if you utilize AI, even like to that extent in talent acquisition, it increases your overall employer brand because the candidate or the potential candidate market sees that, oh wow, this company is actually quite modern. They try to utilize modern technology, even in, let's say, areas where you wouldn't expect it. But personally, I feel like meaningful connections, human interaction is like the foundation of recruitment and talent acquisition. So for me personally, it's a nay.
I love that, by the way. And I actually haven't thought about that. How it's perceived from the candidate perspective, like employer brand. That's the first time someone's actually mentioned something like that to me. It's a really good thought, but I'm on your camp. If I was interviewing and it says it's a generative video interviewing you, I'd like, no, leave, see you later. So I can see your point. So these topics of AI, and this kind of segues quite nicely into what we're talking about, is about, how do we as a talent acquisition function challenge the business? And even on top of AI, the business is saying, we need more AI here and there, let's do this. But obviously, different departments are going to kick back into different topics. And obviously, we're going to look at it from the function that we're both in, talent acquisition. So for those that are listening, when I say, or when you say rather, we challenge the business, what do we actually mean?
Yeah, it's important to define that, I think. And by challenging the business, I don't mean to criticize any decision the business makes, but more of setting a foundation to really be a partner to the business, similar to what we know of the HR business partner or the people partner really being an extended arm of the business. I also mean that you could probably say talent acquisition business partner, really being a sparring partner for the business, knowing what's going on, but also to say, hey, I don't think this is the best way of doing things.
So why is it actually important in general for us to position ourselves like that as a function?
Yeah, I think that it sets the stepping stone for high performing TA culture, and
Mm,
it's interesting because nowadays we focus so much on diversity, inclusion, and equity, but I feel like a lot of companies struggle to establish equity within among the departments a company has. A lot of companies put a lot of weight on the so-called core businesses like sales. Hey, sales makes money, hence it's one of the most important departments of our company. Or hey, product, our product is unique, so that's the most important department. So if we talk about establishing equity among our workforce, we should also think about establishing equity among the departments of the company. And I feel
mm,
like if you are willing to stand up for your department, to challenge the other critical business departments in your function, that's really the stepping stone. And I think that's really important for the company's success overall, because in my personal opinion, everything is interconnected. Yes, sales generates money, but TA is the part that gets you the very good salespeople. And in order to sell good, you have to have a great product. So there comes the product department. So I think everything is interconnected, and that's why it's really important to challenge the business.
that's the business mindset you've got on though.
Yeah,
We're having that, moving away from service providers to business partners, being aware how it's all interlocked. So it's that mindset shift that you've gone through, I guess. With the
exactly.
component of kind of challenging the business, because some people will be listening to this who are in an individual position, others will be listening to it who are maybe in your position, obviously leading the team. I've got two questions to throw at you on this one.
Mhm.
How, by doing this component, by challenging the business, how is it going to help our careers? And second to that, can you maybe give a couple of examples to add more context into areas that maybe you've personally been challenging, either your current or your former companies, just so people can then start thinking, okay, actually that sounds a little bit like what we're doing.
Yeah. I think that, personally, it's important to challenge your stakeholders, challenge the business, is to really be seen as someone that you can, look out for advice, but also to look for feedback. I feel like, at least in the companies I have been working in the past, feedback was kind of lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
It's only like when it was necessary during official performance appraisals, but not like getting really honest feedback in your day-to-day work. So I feel like, if you're able and if you're confident enough to challenge the business, then the business has also a perception of, okay, this person knows what he or she is talking about. Hence, if I don't know what to do in this topic, I can always go to that person. And um, it's the way I have been working the last 2 or 3 years, I would say. And of course, you will have some doubters, but you also have a lot of, let's say, supporters that say, "Hey, I wish, you know, the way you're handling it would have been done the last 5 or 10 years." Yeah.
So it's basically giving yourself that opportunity to shine, as it were, to the wider company to say, look, I know what I'm talking about. Doesn't always mean that, what you're changing on has to be implemented or has to be changed, but at least you're voicing, I know my perception, I know where I'm coming from. And we'll get into how we do that anyways, but it's about just giving yourself that opportunity to put yourself out
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And I think that, in order to be that confident, you have to really have strong arguments, data, targets, but also an understanding of the business. And I think this is the misconception. A lot of people say challenging is always involves emotions, but I don't believe it's the case. You can really challenge some business decisions really from a neutral, data-driven perspective.
Yeah, I'm all for data. Once you say the word data, you've got my ears. Because I think that's key element behind it is maybe I go too much into the data sometimes, but to make a
Mm.
decision on anything and talk about a standardized recruitment process, in order to change that process, from an external perspective, I need to come to you with the data to say it's not working. Otherwise, it is an emotional response. It's I think it's not working. Whereas if I show the data, say it's not working because of this, this, and this, that's me challenging you. Whereas I guess we're talking about from the internal upwards or sidewards or downwards, maybe. So with obviously your personal experience, you said the last 2 or 3 years you've been kind of really working this way. What examples have you got to kind of highlight where it has or maybe where it hasn't worked potentially?
Yeah, I think that in one role I was doing high volume recruitment. So we were recruiting a lot of, let's say, customer service agents for a contact center. And we were struggling to meet hiring targets because, the requirements for that role initially were so high that we really had long vacancies, like long time open vacancies. And once I really drilled down on, hey, yes, I realize you want to have high potential people in this area, you need to take a look at what's hurting you more. Is it the fact that we might hire people that are fulfilling the requirements for 80% and not 100%, or the fact that you keep these vacancies open, for a month and risk that the business is suffering from that because, you can't take enough customer claims or customer calls or sales calls, you really need to weigh down on, okay, what's hurting you more. And the openness from the business to deep dive on that, and challenging them on that is one example, what I can give you. And once we actually did a deep dive on, okay, we're losing way more money on being this strict on the job ad versus let's hire someone that's maybe not 100% a fit, but 80%, and the rest we will upskill during the time, is what was a much better business case. So that's, for example, something I did in the past.
I mean, we're going to touch upon data in a moment anyways, but I imagine an example like that, you don't have all that data and you don't know what the numbers coming out of the business necessarily are and the cost. So it's from what I'm hearing, it's more about raising the concern, raising the question, prompting an exploratory conversation there, and then getting the relevant people involved to say, okay, we need to go look at this data, we need to look at this cost, and kind of, I guess, orchestrating that initial thought process.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we start this process? It's a nice idea to get through. So what would you say is the first initial step we need to be doing as talent team members to move into this kind of component?
Yeah, I think that the first thing you always need to do is take your time, understand the business you're recruiting for in that sense, or doing TA for. I'm a big fan of really understanding the business of as if I would be working in that department myself. So really understanding, okay, what are they doing? What are their projects? What are their challenges? What's their long-term strategy? And then just, like a swarm, just take everything in, gather all the information. And then also, for a time, just go along with the way they currently work. And then once you have been doing that, you already can sense, okay, I feel like this is going well, this needs to be improved. So you have some ideas already of, okay, this could be potential bottlenecks. But I would not attack them right away. I feel like in order to, build stakeholder connections, you also need to somewhat show that, okay, you not only understand the business, you're also able to deliver results. I feel like, challenging the business without being able to deliver results is kind of difficult, so first take your time, understand the business, deliver the results, and then slowly, step by step, start to, raise awareness of, hey, okay, we hired the people you initially wanted. How's it going? What's their 30, 60, 90 day feedback like? How are they going along? Are they happy? Also talk to them. and then really move on from there.
So build those deeper connections before we start making any rash decisions or saying
Yes.
change this, change that.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's funny because in Kühnenagel, but also here, I realized that these small day-to-day interactions you have, they are so valuable. Like I back when I was working Kühnenagel, our head of talent acquisition, our global head of talent acquisition, he was smoking a lot, so he would spend a lot of time in the smoking area. I personally, I'm not a smoker, but I realized, hey, if you just take some time, some minutes, of your day, just hanging out with him, getting to know each other on a more personal level, not only talk about business, it just helps so much understanding how the other person thinks, how they work, what they prioritize, and because all those personality traits, they always translate into business to some degree, right? So if you know a person on that level, you also have a sense of, okay, how they work. So, and in Qcells, it's similar again. And in Qcells, there's another fact, we have a lot of Korean experts. So just showing interest in their culture and asking them, hey, what are your perceived differences in like the Western working culture to the Asian working culture? This opens up so many topics you can discuss. And I feel like this really builds confidence and trust, that you are able to tell each other everything,
Yeah,
and
I love that, by the way.
I
I think
think that's,
I
yeah,
think those little
that's
connections.
a really, yeah, exactly. I think that, if you are able to trust each other, it's also much easier to say, okay, I think what you're doing there is not the right way to do it, or I think we should do it different. It's much easier if you trust each other. I think trust is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a little story here. As you're saying there, it just made me smile. So, obviously, come from the external side of recruitment, it's a little bit more challenging to have those everyday interactions. So, what I
Mm-hmm.
try to do is every quarter, companies that I'm working with, I'll go to the city where it is. So I'm in the UK at the moment. I'll fly to Berlin, and I'll get as many
Mm-hmm.
as many of them out with me. So we're talking CTOs, engineering managers, talent acquisition, whoever, and we'll go karaoke. And there's a particular reason for
Yeah.
karaoke. I don't know why or where I read it, and I could also be lying here, but because you just said Asian culture, I read it somewhere or heard it somewhere that the Asian kind of communities love karaoke because it breaks down the barriers.
Yes.
And you'll see a
Yes.
global CEO rubbing shoulders with the intern with no qualms whatsoever, just singing Sweet Caroline. And they love it. And I was thinking, I read that like 7, 8 years ago, and since then I've never looked back. And it's so fun. And then you end up just really getting to know different people that way. So when you said that, I was
Yeah.
just thinking, so if anyone does want to take their teams to karaoke, I do highly, highly recommend it. It is good fun.
So how's your
Terrible,
voice?
terrible.
Your
No,
singing
awful,
voice?
awful. But that's also part of the fun. So I'm always usually one of the first to go up to,
Yeah.
break down. I can't ask them to come and sing with me if I'm not prepared to make a fool of myself. And after the first couple, everyone's thinking, okay, I can loosen up now. And everyone, literally, you get people, CTOs down to the individual contributor talent acquisition in completely different companies getting on extremely well. And
Yeah.
you make such good connections from that. And then you take it, as you're saying, to business and you tell them how bad of a singer they are, and you'll never let them live it down. So they better work with you.
It's funny though that you mentioned this, because I started my career also as an external recruitment consultant, and building these stakeholder relationships is something that I heavily
Yeah.
learned in that time. Not only talking about, hey, do you have any open projects I can support you with, but really, asking them, how's your business going? What is your main focus? Inviting them for lunch, really taking the
Mm.
effort. And I must admit that once I went in-house, at first my effort was kind of reduced in that sense, because you kind of switch or the mindset of, okay, I don't work for clients anymore because I'm in-house now. But yet at the end of the day, I don't think it makes a big difference of being an external recruitment
No.
consultant or doing TA internally, it's still stakeholders, and at the end, we're all people, and we all love having great connections.
Yeah.
And like I said, the last 2 or 3 years, I really started picking up again on that.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between going from, as you say, moving into that business partner side. It's, you're not just seen as, okay, you can deliver me people when I need them to, but you're seen as an actual go-to expert of, okay, we're doing this, like, what do you think? And having that, genuine opinion at the table. And I would agree. I think a lot of, and this isn't to throw shade at internal versus external recruitment, because otherwise I'm out of a job. But I do find that willingness to go and look at your stakeholders as prospective clients on the internal side, I feel like it's lost somewhere. And you just said it yourself, it's because you kind of have that shift, whereas we always have to look at, okay, you're a client because we don't work for you. So maybe it's just kind of that awareness that, okay, I should be kind of being a bit more proactive and making them more of a stakeholder opposed to a colleague. That could help this.
Yeah.
I am curious though. So when you're not working with a particular stakeholder, so say you're doing a load of operational based roles and you're not really delivering into the technical department for the time being, or however you ever want to call it, right? You still need to have those stakeholders on side for, when you want to make challenges to a business, when you want to make introductions to a business, like, let's call it what it is. It's office politics, right? We have to play the game. You have to get people on side. So how can we still continue to build those meaningful connections when we're not actively working with them right now, or we're not able to show our value to them with a direct hire, for example?
Yeah, I feel like, data would be my first go-to option, because my personal opinion is data never lies. Of course, you can question the source of the data and the systems, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, if you as a company or as a department say, this is our single source of truth, I always say, okay, then you should also rely on that data that this source has produced. So, what I do is, when I started my first leadership roles in the TA function, I was, like on a quarterly basis, I think I was, sending out management reports of, hey, this is the amount of hires in your department. This is the time to hire for your department. That maybe if I had the data, I broke it down to the roles and maybe even to the locations. But and then I would also, show them some insights on the source and the funnel from, application to hire. I would go a bit on to the different, stages, for example, offer to hire ratio and so on, if I saw something there. But at the end of the day, and this came to my mind like 1 or 2 years ago, I felt like the business is not really paying too much attention to that, And while data is good to get the attention of your stakeholders, I was thinking, what do stakeholders from a TA service point of view, what do they really care about? They care about getting the best people as fast as you can, probably. Yeah. And so if I looked at that way, and then some companies, I have to say, they also, of course, care about getting the best people the fastest way and the cheapest way. Forgot that part. But, that really changed my mind of looking at data. I was like, okay, then maybe I need to focus more on the quality of the people we hire, not just on the source and how many, but really focus more on the quality, and really focus more on how did the business profit from you, from a quality perspective, but also from a cost perspective. Did you save them time or money hiring this person? Did you add value to that specific area hiring this person? So this is really how I look at it now.
Put me through that, if that's okay. So, I was going to ask the question. So how are you presenting it then to the stakeholder? Because obviously you've got the data to say, okay, we made this hire. How are you then calculating this was the profitability of that person, or this was the reduction of hours from that person?
Yeah. So there are two things I take a look at. The the first thing is the cost of open vacancy. You know, I would like to show the business of, hey, let's be honest. So in the companies I work with, almost none of them had this cost of open vacancy KPI when I started. So first of all, I had to implement it and explain it. You know, it means how much money are we losing if this vacancy stays open for X amount of time. Normally, I would go by month. Of course, you could also go by days. And then people were like, how can you even calculate this? And there's different ways of going about it. You know, you could start very basic, you know, just I think easiest department would be sales, because most sales people, they have a sales forecast per role. And, you know, if they have a yearly forecast of revenue they have to generate, you know, you can say, okay, if the vacancy is up for 6 months, then that's almost, or that's like half a year revenue lost already by having this position open, you know. There's also more complex ways, you know, by going with the salary, by adding a weight to each role, because you have some back office roles that might not be as revenue sensitive, for example, as sales roles. And then you can also break it down again per, you know, you divide the yearly salary by the month or by days, and then you know how much money you lose per day that this position is open. And if you can tell the business, for example, hey, in the last 3 months, we were able to hire your people 3 months earlier on average than before, then you can also, of course, also calculate how much money was saved by making those hires earlier. That's the cost part. And then for the quality part, you know, what I like to do is really look at the attrition. So how many people in that area dropped out 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. That's, I think, the Amazon model. I mean, you can also, if you don't have that, look at the how many people dropped out during the trial period in Germany. It's 6 months. And then how was the first, you know, performance feedback, which is in Germany usually annually, if that makes sense. So you can start looking at those two fields. You know, what's your attrition rate within the trial period? Is it a voluntary leave? Is it an involuntary leave? And then how was the first official performance appraisal? You know, and then you can say that, hey, for example, 15 out of our last 20 hires, they had a really great performance appraisal. Or worst case, 15 out of our last 20 hires, they all voluntarily left in trial period. I think we are doing something wrong here. So this is, I think, how you get the attention of the business.
Well, you've got my attention. Cost open vacancy. I've never heard of anyone do this, by the way. Never. No one. I mean,
really?
people might be doing it, but 11 years of recruitment, hundreds and hundreds of talent acquisition calls. No one's ever mentioned that KPI. I'm curious. I'm going to test the hypothesis on this one. I'm gonna take that to some people and see if they know it. So we would essentially take the salary of the individual, would find out what their daily average salary would be, work out how much. Well, when they intended to hire that person, say they wanted to hire the person in 3 months from the date it was open. You fill it in 2 months. You've saved them that 30 days. That's how much you've officially saved them from what they predicted.
Exactly. That's like I said, one way of doing it. Other people prefer to, and it comes down to personal preference. Other people prefer to look at it more of a revenue-based approach, but that one is really difficult because not every role is supposed to generate revenue.
I'm thinking more of the concept of where most of the people that I'm speaking to and that listen to this podcast, most come from the tech industry. So a lot, sales is great, don't get me wrong, but ops, back office, developers, they're not. It's super hard to quantify the money you're bringing in unless you have a particular project that you can pinpoint came from your particular team. And some can, some can't. But that's a really interesting concept because that, as you say, that repositions yourself from, hey, I've got this data, come speak to us, to, did you know that we saved you this amount or we cost you this amount potentially? How did it get to that point? You know, why was that the case? Who was not to say who's at fault, but how can we learn from it? Was it a job description? Was it a search in the wrong direction, wherever the case might be. And then you can really pinpoint process management. And then it circles back. I'm going in a spiral now. It goes to candidate experience, and then it goes into all these different avenues of talent acquisition just by understanding cost or save. You've opened up the spider web in my mind, right?
And it opens up, of course, follow-up discussions. For example, if you realize that, hey, we have 10 customer service agent roles open for, I don't know, 6 months, and you calculate the cost per vacancy or per open vacancy for each one of them, you have a business case of maybe working with a recruitment agency or trying out a new job board that's costly, because at the end those options are cheaper than just leaving the vacancy
This circles,
open,
what we were saying before we recorded this morning, and I was talking about the cost per hire document. These two blend really nicely together because the cost per hire document calculates the invested time already, and then your method calculates the actual savings as well. So if you put the two together, say pre-adjustment, this is how much it cost you, how much productivity was lost. Post-adjustment, this is how much we saved you. And I think that's the missing link between business provider and just kind of falling down the gaps of here's some data. And data is king, don't get me wrong. But do we really need to know the average cost or the average salaries of a Java developer every 3 months? I mean, they don't fluctuate that much. They do in the last 2 years, they've spiked, but not that much to, that's not providing your stakeholders with true information. It's interesting.
Yeah, and it really levels up your relationship with that certain business, because it goes from, hey, Eden is not just giving me candidates and then I hire him and he doesn't care, but this goes to, hey, Eden actually cares about how much money we spend and how the candidates are doing, how the first performance is like, and he really tries to build a recruitment process that this has awareness on these things, the quality, but also the cost. So the perception of you as a partner to the business.
Yeah, I'm
really
thinking of like
changes if
career
you try
development
to
plans.
look
This
at it.
is powerful, and I'm hoping people have listened to 30 minutes so far, because this is super powerful to really enhance how your image looks. And you can go into really any type of business. Doesn't matter what level you're at this, by kind of taking this approach and just get an awareness of where you are, and then start drip feeding. And before you know it, you're global talent acquisition manager of insert company here. But it's a really, really powerful way to look at it. Obviously, from the last few years, talent teams have been, I think, hit extremely hard. Layoff after layoff. We've been stretched in. I mean, you've been in a fortunate position at Qcells. You've actually been growing your team, but it's a rare situation, to be honest. Most are the other opposite way. So I'm hearing from the market a lot of burnout. I'm hearing a lot of unhappiness, unease. I think we're actually in for a seismic shift, if I'm honest, in terms of people moving jobs. Once the market picks up, a little bit more money's flowing around, I think all departments, not just talent, but I think all departments are going to see a huge shift and vulnerability in how their teams are structured, because I think most people are just fed up right now. They want to change jobs, but the market's so crap, they don't. Yeah, I can say it. The market is so crap, they don't want to risk being out of work. So the longer we leave it, the worse that shift's going to be. But then comes down to talent teams. You're being bombarded with task after task after task. When is enough enough? How do we work that out?
Yeah, I think that the first 4 or 5 years of my career, I was also, I think it's something we all have to learn at some point, is the ability to say no. And you want to shine, you want to deliver results, and you want to make everyone happy, and then you just keep saying yes, and you make promises, but you make promises on behalf of your own mental or even physical well-being, and detrimental to that, and also detrimental to your actual performance. I realized that if I take on everything people ask me to do, my performance is way worse than when I say no, when I'm honest in what I can do and what I cannot do, when I'm not making empty promises. And then that's my biggest learning point in those 5 years, is really to say no, know what you can, know what you're good at, know what you're not so good at, and really, in a charming way, tell people, hey, I think your requirement here is a bit out of reach, or say, hey, I don't know if I can do this. Give me some time to work on it and I'll come back to you, instead of just saying, hey, I can do whatever you want from me. Because, it's just bad expectation management. I had to learn it the hard way. And then also really stressing for yourself. So don't say yes to
I think that
everything.
comes into as well. And coming back to what we're going through, like challenging the business, if you're able to comfortably say yes to the right things more often, no to things that you don't have capacity for, you're not primed to do, then it kind of carves out organically to the business what we should come to you more with, and where you really are that specialist. Because when you go into any company, you're hired for a job, but you're just a title at that point, but you've got so many nuances inside your skill set that you excel at. And in some cases, some people, fantastic at neurodiversity hiring, and some people fantastic at X, Y, and Z, whatever. And then you start finding who is right for what part of the role of talent acquisition. And that's obviously when you're, in your case, head of talent, you can basically build a team that challenges different parts of the business in the right way, by understanding what they need from you, and then kind of then how they're building that kind of environment around you to support them.
Yeah. Just recently, I had to say no because, we had some hires from, outside of Europe, and, the business has asked me to, hey, can you take over the whole immigration piece? And I said, no, I don't know how to do this. I have no idea what the prerequisites are for somebody, for example, from Turkey or India or South America to move to Germany. I don't even know all the, public institutions that person has to go to, make appointments to. So I said, no, let's consult an external agency that is focused on this, because at the end of the day, it's candidate experience, but also hiring manager experience. They want to have the hiring going as smooth as possible. And I don't know, 5 years ago, I would have said, yeah, sure, let me handle it, and I would struggle so much, and then probably I would mess it up. So I just said no, give my reasons, and it was okay. Everybody respected that.
I like that point as well. It's just respecting what you're capable of doing. And I think in the fact that talent teams are getting so stretched, we feel like we have to say yes in some cases to keep our jobs. If they're letting other people go, and I'm not doing any much hiring, and I'm doing all these projects, I have to keep piling them on because I have to be showing value. When in reality, taking 5 projects on and delivering crap on 4 of them isn't showing value. It's showing the opposite. So having the confidence to say no at that point.
Yeah, that's like one trend in Germany, which is very scary. In a lot of, let's say, corporate companies, the requisition load per recruiter is like 30 to 50, and they keep more and more asking those recruiters that have a high workload to do direct search or active sourcing, however you want to call it, on the side as well. And I feel like, okay, guys, stop. It's not manageable to have, to manage 40 roles and then do direct search on top on LinkedIn or Xing, whatever platform you use on the side. Everything will suffer. The recruitment quality, your stakeholder management, your mental well-being, everything will suffer. So I always give the advice, or I challenge the business to say, hey, let's work with an external agency, or let's hire some internal sourcers that just do that. Because as you said, one person
30 to
can't
40
do it
requirements
all,
is outrageous. Even for high scaling companies, that is outrageous.
Yeah.
I think reality, a very good manageable recruiter who has a wicked scheduling system and organizational skills 12 cap, I think, from experience. Anything more than that, I mean, I struggle anything more than 12 live requirements, but that's not 12 different companies because that's also impossible. 12 requirements across maybe 5 companies tops for me. We limit ourselves as well. Like we only do 3 to 5 companies per person on our team for that reason. You suffer otherwise, and it just doesn't it doesn't help the business. It doesn't help what value you bring to the business, and the candidates are also the ones who suffer. So 30 to 40, mental.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people underestimate that if you're confident enough to say no to certain requests, or no, this is absolutely mad, I cannot do sourcing on top of managing 30 roles, you show that you have respect for yourself. And I feel like this automatically also generates respect from your stakeholders. Hey, that person really values itself. They're honest with what they can do and what's definitely going across the limits. And I respect that. And I feel like this also helps the relationship.
Well, I really appreciate you spending some time and going through this. Obviously, the aspect of how to do it and whatnot, there's so many more avenues, but I think there's a lot to kind of break in from what we've discovered today. And I'd like to say, I appreciate you being very honest about your experience as well, because as you say, you could have come on quite easy and said, yeah, I've been doing this for the last 10 years. It's a piece of cake. And it's quite refreshing to hear that it's still a journey that you've recently kind of got back to, and as well. So like I said, thank you so much for joining, for sharing your knowledge. And obviously, if people want to hear more, connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, most probably on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So, you can just send me a request or message me, whatever you would like to talk about. I really love talking about TA. So, always up for a discussion and, exchanging ideas, exchanging best practices. And really appreciate you taking the time to discuss on this very important topic.
Appreciate that.
My opinion. And looking forward to the upcoming
Appreciate it. Thank you so
episodes.
much.